That's a lovely bite, that was. Well, here we are at Rookery Waters, and you can see behind me, this is Raven. Brilliant lake, full of fish, and as you can hear the birds singing, we're into spring and summer's on its way. It's a lot warmer now, and what happens then? Fish start to come in the margins. And I'm going to take you through my approach to essential margin fishing. Let's get on with it. With margin fishing, it can be mind-blowing as where to fish. Like I'm sitting here now, I can fish to the left of me, I can fish to the right of me. And I always prefer to fish my right-hand side being left-handed. It's easier for me. Although that's not always the best place to fish. Maybe that side to my left will be a better peg. Now, Raven here, I imagine when I plumb up, I'll have a lovely depth of maybe a couple of feet. And ideally, that is the perfect depth for margin fishing. But then on this complex here at Rookery, you've got magpie, and that's probably 3.5 foot deep in the margin. And you catch a lot of fish there in the margin. But the deeper it is, when you're feeding, you can get foul lookers and line bites. 2 foot is a lovely depth to fish in. And then another lake, Larford, complex there, they catch a lot of big fish in the margin there, and you're fishing in literally probably 6 inches of water. So saying 2 foot's the ideal depth, it is to fish the margin properly, but shallower the margin, you'll see fish bell waving and tailing up, and the deeper it is, more chance of foul looking fish. So ideally, lovely spot to fish, it's a couple of foot and tight into the bank, because a lot of these banks on a lot of commercials are undercut. Although you see the finish of the water hitting the bank, it goes down and then it comes underneath. And some places it can go underneath 2-3 foot. I remember one year we netted magpie over here, and they dropped the water levels to net it, and one of the pegs I could fit in under the bank. I know I'm only small, but I could fit in under the bank and you wouldn't see me where it was undercut. So people think they're fishing right tight against the margin, but they're not. Fish can go under, literally 4 or 5 foot away from the float. And they used to foul look a lot of fish there, and that was the reason, because it was so undercut. Fish coming out, and the depth of it, you've got like 3.5 foot. So ideally 2 foot of water. I've chose to fish here. I'm going to plumb up in a minute and show you. You know, you might want to think, oh, we'll fish there, it's easier. I like to fish, give myself a little bit of distance in the margin, just to go away from me. I know F1 fishing, although there's a lot of F1s in here, it's mixed, there's a lot of carp as well. But a lot of notoriously F1 venues, when they're margin fishing, you might be just with a top kit. You know, you might be just fishing just there like that. And that is the way to fish. But this venue, Raven, being a mixed fishery, a lot of carp, I like to give myself a little bit of distance and where to fish as well. I mean, I've got a little bit of a island coming out, there's an in-cut, and I'm going to plumb up just on the front of that, and I'm sure that will be undercut, but I'm going to plumb up just on the front of that, so it gives me the chance, any fish coming along as well, I can always go into that little cut, but I'm going to go on the front of it, and I'm going to plumb up right on the front of that. I've actually, some places you're not allowed to garden, but I've just pulled away some furry weed that was sticking out so I can go tight into the bank. So let's just get a rig and plumb up. The main thing with plumbing up is trying to find a flat. Ideally, to go there, I'm looking, I know it's going to be a couple of foot deep. I don't want it sloping off, because that can be a problem then. And it's plumbing around trying to find a little flat bit. And sometimes where you want to fish, you can't really, because it slopes off too quick. And obviously when you put your bait in as well, your bait's going to go down the slope, and the fish come in and they'll waft it down the slope. So trying to find a nice flat bit. So where I want to fish, I might not be able to fish when I plumb it. I'll have to find somewhere else, or maybe I'll have to go to the left of me rather than to the right of me where I want to fish. But let's have a look and see. I'll come nice and tight into the bank there. I've just, there we go. If you can see that, that's just set dead depth. So when I relax my line, the float doesn't pull down, because sometimes the deeper it is, the more stretch you get in your line, and you get a false indication of the depth. That to me is just about bang on, nicely tight in. Now I'm coming out from the bank, Just to see, that's quite far. I'm right tight in there now. That is lovely and flat. That's about the best you could want to get a margin peg. Now if I go where you can't see, I'm coming right into the cutting in the bank, and the depth probably changes about an inch. So that's really flat. That's lovely, that is. Lovely depth. Now if it was sloping away, what I tend to do then is come nearer me and try and find where I've got a flat. Because it's sometimes you might have to fish on it sloping away, but ideally you try and find a flat bit. And 9 times out of 10 you can find a flat bit, and it's much easier to fish a margin with a flat rather than it sloping away. Yeah, that's lovely. Let's bring that back. Also, a lot of people tend to fish close to when they're fishing the margin because it's easy if they want to feed by hand as well. Now, ideally, making it easy for you doesn't mean you're going to catch more fish. So I just like to fish a little bit further away. Just from me, I'm making a little bit of noise on here, and I think you can just draw more fish just going just a couple of joints away. I mean, you can really boost your weights in matches. It's a great way to pleasure fish. But with margins, it tends, when you get there at the start of a match, most anglers will fish the margin from the second half of the match onwards. I mean, magpie, you can fish the margin from start to finish. There's so many fish in there. But here and other venues, it's best to prime your margin. Fish your other lines, fish away, you're catching fish, and just keep remembering to just feed your margin, just keeping it primed, ready for when you go there. But the longer you leave it, the better it builds up. And I think fish associate that the margins, when people finish the end of the day fishing, they throw the bait in. And I think fish associate with that bait in the edge, it's safe to eat. And obviously what's come on leaps and bounds now is dead maggots as a bait. And I think sometimes fish coming to the margins, maggots have been thrown in there, probably been there a couple of hours, and they've sort of drowned, and they think they're safe to eat. So then by match anglers now introducing and fishing dead maggots, which has come on leaps and bounds, especially, well, margin fishing has the last 3 or 4 years, I think it's because fish think it's safe to feed in the edges, and you get a lot of big fish in the edges in the margins. And margin fishing has gone through the roof. It's unbelievable. You can really boost your weights in matches and have great days pleasure fishing. To me, there's just a few baits. A lot of anglers do complicate it to themselves where they have too many choices, too many baits. Now, a venue can dictate what baits you would use. For instance, if this was full of roach and small fish, then using dead maggot would probably be a no-no. Although it's not an hard and fast rule, but some places it may work and you just have to put up with them. But as a guide, really, if a commercial you're fishing is full of silvers, then really it doesn't work using dead maggots or even live maggots. But as I've said earlier, dead maggot seems to be the bait for margins because I think fish associate it with being safe. That's my thoughts on it. But I'll just show you some baits now that I've got here. Sweet corn. Now, it's a superb bait anyway, but using sweet corn in the margin is good on its own, but use it with the right combination, it's devastating. Now, I'm going to show you a link with sweet corn. These micro pellets. Now they've been soaked. You must soak your pellets. Very simple procedure. You just put some in a plastic bag the night before the session, cover them with like an inch of water, put the lid on or in a bag, seal it up, put them in your bait fridge, and by the morning they're all soaked up lovely, just like these are. Nice and soft, you can squeeze them. Now that is an ideal bait to fish a piece of sweet corn over. Can you hear the cuckoo? That shows we're coming into spring and into summer. Now, a very good way of fishing the margin is micros. and corn, but you don't feed so much corn. You just keep corn for the hook, maybe a few grains you put in. So there's a great combination there, micros and corn. And there's one other bait you can fish over the micros that works really well. And it works well over ground bait, but works really well in a lot of venues over micros. And that's a dendrobina. Fishing a whole dendrobina on the hook. But that is another brilliant bait for fishing over micros. It is it's brilliant, really does work. So there's two ways of fishing, and one of my favourites is ground bait. Here I've got mixed up super crushed green, Sonia Bait super crushed green, and I've got it very damp. You can even mix it up the night before, and I've actually riddled that off. It's very important to riddle it off so you've got no lumps. Because when a fish moves into the margin and you haven't riddled his lumps, he can easily fill himself up, a few sips of the ground bait and he's off. Where you want to keep him in your peg. So with that all damp and riddled off, it's such a fine mix. Fish love it. And with that, dead maggots. Just looks like a load of goo. And they're just maggots I've had left over from a session, live maggots. I just freeze them, bag them up, just stuck them in the freezer, and then get them out the night before for a session. The carp absolutely love them. And that's fed with a ground bait. And as far as quantities go, obviously sweet corn, a can of sweet corn would be more than enough. Handful of dendrobinas, because you're not feeding them, they're just for the hook. Micros, I would have thought 2 pints of micros soaked, so bear in mind that that was probably a pint and a half of micros before I soaked them. They've soaked into 2 pints, so you can always do too much if you do them 2 pint dry. Dead maggot, couple of pints of dead maggot, more than enough. And ground bait that I've got knocked up here, I would say 3/4 of a kilo is ample. Some venues can take a lot of ground bait, but you can get away with a kilo. You really can, without overfeeding them. So not loads of bait, you can feed too much. If you're going to feed too much, you'll get foul lookers and all sorts. So very important when I show you the way to feed, and little and often, not to pile it in. Right, I'll take you through the rigs I've got set up, and then we'll start fishing. Now I've set up 2 rigs. Both rigs are the new soft steel. I've mic'd this up, it's unbelievable, and it's stronger than the power micron. So you're getting more for your diameter of line in strength. So both rigs are to 020, and then I've set up one's to 018 hook length and one's to 016. Both size 14 of their new commercial carp. There's a stronger one, power carp, above that, but this is the range of hooks that I find suits most of my commercial fishing. And the floats, I've gone for the Matrix Mudline, lovely painted hollow fibre tip, lovely flexible robust glass stem, and in fact it's a reinforced eye. The eye will never pull out of there, fixed into the bristle, and I can see that perfectly in the margin. But I know a lot of anglers opt, oh, flick one there, have opt for the power margin, being a thicker tip and a different shaped body, whereas the Mudline is a more sort of bird's egg type shape, rugby ball, and the power margin is like a cigar shape, elongated. Lovely little floats, and just choosing the Mudline one, it's a very short float. So obviously fishing in shallow water, less length of float. I find that absolutely ideal. I've got them shotted with a bulk. I've got a 4-inch hook length, and the bulk of their square shot is literally sitting on top of the join of the hook length of the loop to loop. And I've got no dropper just a bolt, because I'll be lifting and dropping in the edge, and it'll hold it firm tightly if the fish is swiveling around and trying to move the bait, where it'll just hold it steady. The elastic I'm using is our hollow core. I'm a lover of our hollow core, and obviously for the heavy hook length of the 018, I've got our red, which is 12 to 14, and then the other rig with the 016, I've got our 10 to 12, which is the orange hollow core. Really forgiving and really plays the fish well. So now, let's get on with the feeding and catch a few fish. Right, so I'm going to start off. I put one pot in earlier, but just a nice pot of that soup crust green. Now I'm going to cut that in nicely against that piece of bank that comes out. I haven't put any maggots in yet, any dead maggots in yet, so I like to leave that as long as possible. Now I'm going to start on the 018 hook length. I'm going to put 3 dead red maggots on that 14 hook. You can easily fit 4 in there, but I'm going to put 3 on. Nothing in that pot yet. I've got a big one of our flexi pots with an extender put on, which once I start now, each time I get a fish I shall go in with that full of ground bait and cut that in with a few dead reds once I start catching, because you just kick-start it off with a big pot while you're fishing through the match before you go there. Because once I've fed with a big pot, each time I go in and catch a fish, I'll just go in with that full of ground bait and a couple of dead reds. When I'm fishing with that bulk, that just goes straight to the bottom, and I know my bait's directly below it, and it's not being whooshed all over the place when the fish come in. A lot of times in matches, a lot of people, they'll look in the margin, maybe after a couple of hours, not get no indication of nothing, then just leave it, don't even feed it, just think, oh, I'm not going to catch there. And yet, leave it another 20 minutes, it could be solid. Just when they decide to come in and start feeding in that edge. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that took about 3 or 4 minutes. Always much better fish in the margin, always. Yeah, feels a nice fish. Fight really hard, and it's quite deep. It's about 5-6 foot deep in the middle. Gives them power to surge, and nice chunky mirror. Lovely fish. There we are, beautiful fish. Lovely mirror. Just want to show you the pot that I've been using, or there's a range of pots, of flexi pots. I've been using this one, which is the large one. I'll show you that in one moment. And there's obviously a medium one. You've got a small one, and obviously small one could be winter time, just coming out of winter, going into winter. And obviously the big one that I'm using. Also, you've got, with these pots, extensions. You can see I've got one extension on there, but you could, if you wanted, go on and on, but I've just fished it, the large pot, with one on. But it's just a way of fishing, getting a lot more bait in and still using the same size pot. But by putting that on, and the way I've fished it today, I can increase, when I put the ground bait in, I'm putting in twice as much ground bait with that extension on there. And that's worked today. And then also, in between, I've put the big pot out and put some in. But that's putting a lot more feed in than just the standard pot itself. A lot more, twice as much. And it's worked. So, but another day you might not want that on there. But you've got the option to put it on or take it off or add to it. Okay, I just caught a lovely fish, so now I'm going to put a few little dead reds in, probably about 15, 20 there, and then just top this big flexi pot with the extension, with the super crush green with the ground bait. So I'm not putting as much in, but just enough to keep them hunting around down there. Hoping that's not just the only one. So first thing, I just get in, cut that out, wash that pot out, then let it all straighten out and put it back into position, hoping to catch another one. I've gone there with a big pot. I think you're just putting too much in and you'll get them all like rushing around and your chance of foul lookers. So just want to keep a little bit, each time I catch a fish, just top it up with that flexi pot full of ground bait and just a few dead reds. See, when you come in the margin, catching fish of that size like I had, you don't need many to boost your weight. Little perch. I'll put a few more maggots in. Just top it up with ground bait again. There we go. Lovely bite again. Maggots, the dead reds. I put 2 through the bum and 2 through red, but I alternate it. So I go bum, head, bum, head. That way you get more of the hook showing. Very simple, very effective. And now the main one, let me show you the worm, how I slap the worm. But I hook the worm first, because they wiggle. Let's put this big worm on. Now look at him wiggling like mad, and what he does when you layer it in, he tends to curl up all your hook length and not your shot, your bulk shot. So I'll hook him like that and I'll slap him on the water, like this. I'll spin it round, I'll smack it 1, 2, 3, do 4 for that, bring it in, and there it is. It's not moving at all. Unbelievable, and it just works. It just shocks the worm. It's absolutely awesome. Now let's see if they can't resist a worm. So again, make sure you get your feed in first, out your pot. Then lower that worm down in amongst it and see if that works. Whole worm can be brilliant. Oh, there's one there, just bell waved out. Obviously got spooked. That was a quick bite, that was. A smaller fish. That smaller fish, might be an F1. No. Little common. Ever such a quick bite, but there was a few fish down there, I could see the swirls. That's a lovely bite, that was. Oh, it's a common. I thought it was a ghosty. Big common. Lovely fish. Oh. I'm just going to give it another big pot. A ground bait. They seem to respond. As soon as I feed, they respond. I'm going to put a few dead reds in. Have a good pot of ground bait. They seem to come straight on that. There we are, that was a lovely bite. This is lovely fishing though when you get one on down the edge. This could be a big ghostie. I don't think it's a mirror. The way it's fighting, they don't give up, the ghosties. It's shot off like mad. It's awesome fishing. A little swirl, little indication. I see a big tail in the side there. I thought, oh my God. And the float shoots under and it's awesome. Oh, it's a common. I thought it was a ghostie. Big common. Lovely fish. Oh. Brilliant bites though, just shoot straight under. You think nothing's there, and then that one before though, I see the tail. Whether that was the fish I caught, I don't know. Oh, that was a lovely bite. Shot straight towards me that time. Smaller fish, I think. Oh yeah, F1. Lovely F1. Beautiful fish. Just a good little tip for you. As you can see, I've got my roller set up. I've got 2 sections set up next to the length of pole that I'm using. And the idea of that is if I hook a big fish, as I'm fishing down my margin to my right here, and it shoots off and starts to bottom the elastic out, I can just quickly take out my little section protector, put the 2 sections on and follow the fish. And likewise just play it back, unship. Obviously I'm just pushing that in now, and then just onto your roller with the other 2. Even if you've got a margin pole, you could bring your roller closer and just have 1 section on it. But the mistake to make is to have 3 or 4 sections made up, and I hook a fish and it shoots an angle, and I can lift these quite easily, 2 sections. You try and lift 3 or 4, you're going to snap this section. So only 2 sections, which are quicker to put on for the security of landing the fish. Very simple and very effective. And like I say, if you've got a margin pole, you can bring the roller closer if you've only got 1 section. At least it gives you security of adding another section on to follow the fish. If your elastic's bottomed out, it's going to break you. It just gives you that security. Very easy and very simple. Oh, there we go. Another one. They're really coming well now. Maggot's been my best bait. A bunch of maggots, and like I say, just feeding the ground bait. I've had some real nice lumps. What I wanted to show you really, it just shows though that margin fishing, you do get the much better fish. I think I've only had 1 F1. So it's worked with the ground bait and a bunch of dead maggots, best bait. But it just shows what you can catch in the margin and how good it is. I mean, it's a brilliant method to fish. It's so exciting as well because you see the fish coming in. Unlike when you're fishing in deeper water, you can actually see the fish there, and when you feed you see them there. And it's exciting because you know when your float goes, it's going to be, well, a decent fish. It is really exciting seeing the swirls, and then your float goes, your elastic comes out. It's brilliant, it really is. And it's a brilliant, not so much match fishing to build up weights, but as a pleasure session coming out, it's awesome. And you don't need a lot of bait. As you've seen, I've probably used 3/4 kilo of ground bait, that's all gone. I've probably used a pint of dead maggots and 2 worms that I had to go on worm, but no, next to nothing. So your bait's not going to cost you a lot. Get out there and give it a go. I'll get packed up and we'll just have a look at what I've caught. Just a special thanks to Rookery Waters and Alex for having me here to do this. I hope you've enjoyed it. I certainly have. All remains me is to get these back in the water where they belong.